So I'm Sandra Eldridge. I am Director of the Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit, and I'm also Professor of Biostatistics. So the Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit is one of 51 registered clinical trials units registered with the UK Clinical Research Collaboration. As with all the other registered clinical trials units, it has a brief to design, conduct, analyse and publish clinical trials and other well-designed studies. So it is unique amongst the clinical trials units in having the word pragmatic in its title. So the word pragmatic was first used in relation to clinical trials by Schwartz and Lelouch in 1967 in a paper that they wrote where they explain that there are two different kinds of problems that we might be trying to address when we conduct a clinical trial. The first problem is where we want to try and understand some kind of biological, physiological process. We want to test a causal hypothesis, usually about the effects of a drug or something like that. And this leads to an explanatory trial where the main consideration is to try and improve understanding. By contrast, they explain that there's a different sort of problem, which is where we are trying to think about decision making and help decision makers to make sensible decisions, and in that case that will lead to a pragmatic trial where the main emphasis is on this decision making for policymakers or for clinicians. In fact, in recent years, the research community has recognised there's not really a dichotomy between these two types of trials, explanatory trials and pragmatic trials, but it's more like a spectrum. And within the clinical trials unit, we do trials across that spectrum, but most of the trials that we conduct are at the pragmatic end of that spectrum. And because we're trying with those trials to help decision makers, policy decision makers or clinical decision makers to make decisions, we don't only do trials on drugs, but a lot of the trials that we do are around interventions that might, for example, be aiming to change patient behaviour, to change practitioner behaviour, or it might be a reorganisation of health services. So we do a wide range of these trials within the Pragmatic Clinical Trials Unit, and because of the types of trials that we do, they often have particular designs, for example a lot of cluster randomised or step wedge designs, and there are a substantial number of staff within the unit who have experience and expertise in these particular types of trials, and alongside the trials themselves do methodological work to look at the methodology within these trial designs.